Hello, let's go ahead now and talk about functional brain systems of the central nervous system. That is a network of neurons that work together, but the neurons are dispersed wide throughout the areas of the brain. So these are little small networks of neurons, aggregates of neuronal bodies dispersed widely throughout the brain tissue, the cortical areas, along with the nuclei in the brain areas that work together. The two such systems are the limbic system and the reticular formation. The limbic system, and that means to encircle, their structures, that means little aggregations of neuronal bodies, nerve cell bodies, that are on the medial aspect of the cerebral hemispheres and the diencephalon. We remember what the diencephalon is made out of. That's the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the epithalamus. So these are areas that includes parts of the diencephalon, particularly the hypothalamus, and some of the other cerebral structures that we talked about. That's going to encircle the brain stem. Here is figure 12.16 in your textbook that you need to study. It looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? The outline of the limbic system. Looks like a futuristic spaceship, maybe something the Cleons would have. So we see on the left the diencephalic structures of the limbic system, which include the anterior thalamic nuclei, the hypothalamus, and the mammillary body. Also, we see the olfactory bud, because that goes back, because these are actually structures that first were of primary importance in the rhinencephalon and all. We see the corpus callosum. Of course, we see the septum pellucidum that separates the two lateral ventricles. We see the fiber tracts. It's on the right hand side in green. The fiber tracts connecting the limbic structures such as the fornix and the anterior commissure. And then we see the cerebral structures in the limbic system, which includes the geniculate gyrus, the septal nuclei, and the amygdala body. And of course we have the hippocampus, dentate gyrus, and parahippocampal gyrus as well. The limbic system is what we call our emotional or affective brain. So it's where we have these, we feel our emotions, we recognize the emotions that other people expresses to us through, like with the use of the amygdaloid body. That allows us to recognize angry or fearful facial expressions that the other people have. We can differentiate whether they're smiling at us with affection, or if they're angry, or if they have fear, experiencing fear. It allows us then to assess our dangers in the area, or as we perceive them. And the amygdaloid then helps us to have the fear response elicited. The cingulate gyrus role is in expressing our emotions via our gestures and to resolve our mental conflict. So if we're happy, we might gesture with our arms extended out and a smile on our face. If we're determined not to respond to someone, we might cross our arms over our chest. And then to resolve our mental conflicts, let's just say that we saw someone that came up to us and said that they were hungry and they needed $10 or $20 to go buy some food for them and their loved ones, but yet we need every dollar that we got. We need that $10 or $20 to complete paying for the power bill or the phone bill. And we're mentally conflicted. Well, do I give this poor soul, if I believe that he or she really needs the money, the $20, and then have to worry about getting it back to pay our bill? Do we pay our bill? So we all are confronted with these mental conflicts. And that part of the limbic system helps us to hopefully resolve the conflict. So the limbic system then puts emotional responses to odors and all. Usually they're pretty cut and dry. As I've said many times, we can smell certain, say, odors from different flowers, and we might think of a wedding or a funeral, or we might other odors if we've been were our house burnt down or in a car wreck that would do that, or we smell odors within the house that there's something burning that we know then was usually furniture, a part of the house. So we're going to say, hey, I've got to check this out, see if the house is on fire, the kitchen is on fire, something like that. And most of the output of the limbic system, in other words, how we respond and all, is via the hypothalamus. The limbic system, like I said, is we know and it's just, think that deals with our emotion, but also cognition. It interacts with the prefrontal lobes, allows us to react emotionally to things that we consciously understand to be happening and all. So it gives us this conscious awareness of our emotional richness in our lives. You know, we can see someone that is happy because something good has happened. You know, they've graduated, and we understand their emotional response from that because we know all the good things that's going to happen because they've graduated, say, from college, a better job, more income, more material possessions and all. Now, part of the limbic system that it deals and plays a role in memory is the hippocampus and the amygdaloid body as well. So the amygdaloid or the amygdala is involved in a lot of areas with our emotional brain. Memory is one of those areas that we're just now beginning to get a little bit better understanding of how we take in data, process it for short-term uses, store it for later retrieval, and how we retrieve it, and how we put all these different pieces of memory together for them to be a benefit to us. Now, the reticular formation, the three broad columns that runs the length of the brainstem. And again, we know what the brainstem is composed of: the midbrain, pons, and the medulla. These are long conductive pathways of axons. We have the raphe nuclei, the medial or large group of nuclei, the lateral small cell group of nuclei. Then it's going to send their tracks, axonal tracks, to different places. The thing about this reticular formation, it has such a far-flung axonal connections with the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the different areas of the cerebral cortex, the cerebellum, and the spinal cord, and all. So it's got connections to the whole brain, everything. Therefore, we know it's involved with the arousal of the brain. We know if there's injury to this, then we go into a coma. So the particular parts of this reticular formation, called the reticular activating system, RAS, and there's a motor function to it as well, but the reticular activating system sends impulses to the cerebral cortex to keep it conscious and alert and all. It filters out repetitive, familiar, or weak stimulus. And this works along with the hypothalamus. So 99% of all the stimulus that we receive, we don't consciously know about it because we don't need to know about it. I don't need to know every time I move my body and the clothing on my body then rubs across my shoulders and my arms. I don't need to know about that. I don't need to know about all the background noises and sounds going on. So if you were to truly sit down and think about all the sounds that you can pick up in your environment, the the cracking of the house walls, and they move a little bit, and the wind blowing outside, and little insects making noise, or whatever. You realize that you don't really consciously hear those, perceive those the majority of the time. You don't feel your clothes on you the majority of the time. You first feel them when you first put them on in the morning, maybe, especially if your pants are a little too tight, and then after that, you forget that they're there. Now, this reticular formation can be inhibited by sleep centers, of course, and alcohol and drugs. We know that severe injury in this area will result in permanent unconsciousness or coma. The motor functions this. It helps to control gross limb movements via the reticulo, that's from the reticular formation, spinal tracts, goes down the spinal tracts. And the reticular autonomic centers regulate the visceral motor functions, such as the medulla, the vasomotor centers, and the cardiac centers, and the respiratory centers. So here's a diagram, figure 12.17, that shows the vastness of the input that this particular formation has. We see that it receives visual impulses and auditory impulses, and then it goes through and it has radiation and projection tracks up to all parts of the brain. We as human are human because we put together all of our experiences. We're not limited just to a few stimuli that we reflectively react to all the time. So we're, depending upon how the individual puts all this together, we'll view the world differently. We have different opinions, perceptions of our environment. Why do some people, they see the glass half full and experience happiness and say, boy, I'm lucky I got half of the glass is full. Other people sees the glass half full and they feel cheated. Somebody got my other half. I only have half. I've been deprived of half and all. All of that is with all these areas of the brain being associated together based upon past experiences. And we know now some genetic predispositions as well. Consciousness. What is consciousness? We say it's the conscious perception of sensations. It's a voluntary initiation and control of movements. We decide to move our arm. It's the capabilities associated with higher mental processing, such as memory, logic, judgment, what we consider to be ethical type things. We know that loss of consciousness, in other words, you're not, we can't tell that you perceive these sensations, bodily sensations. We know that loss of consciousness is a signal that brain function is impaired. Of course, we know if you faint or have syncope, a name for that, which is usually brief unconsciousness, that you're not responding to your environment. And then, of course, coma is this type of unconsciousness for an extended period of time. Clinically, consciousness is defined on a continuum that grades our behavior in response to stimulus. We alert. We are alert to our environment. We readily respond appropriately to stimuli. We have drowsiness, lethargy. We don't appear to completely perceive, especially quickly enough or fully enough, our environment. Then stupor, to when we definitely are talking confused, we seem to be non-oriented to where we're at. And then coma, when we don't have any of those major responses. So consciousness involves the simultaneous activity of a large cortical areas. And again, we know what cortical means. That means the cortex, cerebral cortex, that little 2 to 4 millimeters of area where all these billions of neurons are at. This idea of consciousness is superimposed on other neural activities, and it's holistic. It means that our brain is holistic, it's totally interconnected. Everything can contribute to how we perceive our environment and what we think of it.